Welcome to Threads of Truth, the podcast where real life mysteries meet internet speculation. Today, we're going to explore a truly haunting case. It really challenges our understanding of connection and isolation in the modern world. It's the story of Joyce Carol Vincent, a London woman whose body was found in 2006. But the shocking truth is, she had likely passed away 3 years earlier, probably around December 2003. Imagine that a young woman, seemingly vibrant and connected, living in a bustling, vibrant city like London, could simply vanish from the world without a single soul noticing for over 2 years. It's a silence that just speaks volumes.
It really does. And this isn't a crime story in the way we usually think of them, is it? It's more of a profound societal mystery, one that raises these deeply unsettling questions about how we interact, or maybe how we don't interact with each other, about the invisible lives that exist all around us. And, what it truly means to be connected today, especially in a big city. We'll try to unpack the known facts, look at the lingering questions, and the powerful symbolism that makes Joyce's story so incredibly compelling and, well, ultimately so tragic. The sheer unlikelihood of it. Someone being completely forgotten in a major urban center for that long. It really makes this case stand out. It forces us, to consider the very fabric of our communities and the threads that bind us, or maybe don't.
It's an almost unimaginable scenario. So let's begin to pull at these threads and explore the life of Joyce Carol Vincent. Before she effectively vanished from public view, who was this woman whose story has captivated so many people?
That's really the crucial starting point, isn't it? To try and understand the profound silence that eventually just enveloped her, we first need to piece together the vibrancy of her life before that. Joyce Carol Vincent was born on October 19th, 1965, right here in London. Her parents were immigrants from Grenada. That detail itself places her within the rich, diverse cultural tapestry of the city, bringing a unique heritage to her upbringing. At the time of her presumed death, around late 2003, she was just 38 years old, still very much in the prime of her life, you'd think, with a lifetime of experiences seemingly still ahead of her.
So she wasn't someone who had always been on the fringes of society then, not at all. The sources describe her quite vividly, actually, painting a picture of a really dynamic individual.
Exactly. And what's truly striking here, what makes her eventual fate so much more poignant, is that stark contrast between who she was described to be and the circumstances of her discovery years later. Friends, acquaintances, former colleagues. They consistently characterize her as intelligent, beautiful, and remarkably outgoing. She wasn't a recluse by any stretch of the imagination, quite the opposite, really. She genuinely cultivated a wide and active social circle, seemed to engage deeply with the world around her, thriving on interaction. She was known to be a genuine fan of music, for instance, which speaks to a certain vibrancy, right? A passionate connection to culture and the arts.
I remember reading one detail that truly stands out, almost as if it belongs to a different person entirely from the one found years later in that bedsit.
You're probably thinking about the fact that she reportedly met Nelson Mandela back in 1990. And yeah, this isn't just some casual encounter or a passing anecdote. It speaks volumes, I think, about the kind of life she once led. To be in the orbit of such a global icon, especially at such a pivotal moment in history, it suggests a life that was rich with experiences, connections, maybe even a degree of public engagement or involvement in significant cultural or political moments. It paints a picture of someone who is truly plugged into the world around her, far from isolated at that point.
And professionally, her career path seems to back this up too. This image of a well-integrated, successful person. She wasn't just working anywhere. She held secretarial positions for some really prestigious companies.
That's absolutely right. Her professional life adds another layer to this picture of an integrated and successful individual. She worked for major firms like OCL, CITO, Laudaventure, and the internationally known accounting giant Ernst & Young. These aren't small operations. They're well-established, reputable organizations. So this indicates a high level of professional competence, stability, and a clear integration into the corporate world of London. It suggests she was navigating that world pretty effectively, earning a good living, which of course makes her subsequent disappearance and isolation even more perplexing when you try to understand her story. It's a powerful thread that, for a time, kept her firmly woven into the fabric of society.
Okay, so we've painted this picture. A well-connected woman, professionally successful, seemingly living a full and vibrant life. But then, as you mentioned, something shifted dramatically around 2001. That seems to be a key turning point in her story. Can we walk through that period and what happened? Because it feels like a completely different chapter began then.
Absolutely. This is precisely where the enigma of Joyce Carol Vincent really deepens, where those vibrant threads of her life start to, well, fray. A significant turning point appears to be March 2001. At this time, for reasons that remain entirely unknown, even today, she resigned from her job at Ernst& Young. Now, it's a major step for someone with her kind of established professional background, especially without a clear next step or any kind of public explanation. The lack of clarity around why she did that is one of the many unanswered questions hanging over her story.
And it wasn't just a job change, was it? It seems like it happened around the same time as a much more profound withdrawal, a deliberate withdrawal from pretty much every aspect of her life.
Crucially, yes, and perhaps most heartbreakingly, around this exact same time, she began to deliberately cut off contact with her friends and her family. Now, this wasn't just a gradual fading away, where connections naturally loosen over time. The sources indicate it was a conscious, active decision to withdraw. Think about that for a moment. Actively severing ties with the people who formed her support network, her social life, her emotional anchors. This kind of intentional isolation is incredibly difficult to achieve unless it's a very deliberate choice, or maybe driven by powerful, overwhelming external circumstances. It suggests a profound desire to just disappear from her previous life.
The sources mention a possible history of domestic abuse contributing to this intense withdrawal. How might that have played a role in her decision to seemingly disconnect from everything and everyone she knew? It provides a heartbreaking potential motive, doesn't it?
It's an incredibly significant detail, yeah. And one that offers a potential, albeit deeply heartbreaking, explanation for her actions. A history of domestic abuse could undeniably lead someone to seek profound solitude, or maybe a desperate need for absolute security and anonymity, away from potential harm or from anyone who might know her whereabouts. The sources indicate that she is believed to have moved into a shelter at some point, which is unfortunately a common and often necessary path for people escaping abusive relationships and trying to find safety. She eventually transitioned from a shelter into the bedsit flat, the one owned by a housing trust, where her remains were later found. This whole trajectory, from a successful professional in these big firms to someone seeking refuge in a shelter and then ending up at a bedsit, it strongly suggests a period of seeking sanctuary and tragically profound isolation. It implies a deep-seated desire to be hidden, perhaps, to disappear from a life that might have become unsafe, or maybe just to start over somewhere and no one could find her.
So, this withdrawal wasn't just about disconnecting from friends or changing jobs. It was potentially a desperate and tragic attempt to find safety and anonymity, to kind of erase herself from a certain narrative. Her death is speculated to have occurred around December 2003. What do we know about the circumstances leading up to that and the official findings, given the mystery surrounding her final years,
Well, the exact cause remains unascertained, that's the official term, mainly because of the advanced condition of her remains when she was found. It made definitive forensic analysis very difficult. But the sources do note that Joyce suffered from asthma and also a peptic ulcer. These pre-existing health conditions are believed to have been contributing factors to her death. So the official findings suggest it was likely due to natural causes, perhaps a severe asthma attack or maybe complications from the ulcer. But the lack of absolute certainty is an unfortunate consequence of the long time that passed before her discovery.
Right. And then the discovery itself, over 2 years later, January 2006. That's almost unbelievable to comprehend in a city like London. What was the scene like when her body was finally found? The details that have emerged are just incredibly haunting.
The scene was, as you say, incredibly poignant and, frankly, quite haunting.
Yeah.
On January 25, 2006, bailiffs from the Metropolitan Housing Trust were attempting to repossess her bedsit in Wood Green, North London. This was due to a significant backlog of unpaid rent, which ultimately served as the critical catalyst for the discovery. Almost a grim administrative trigger, really. When they finally forced entry, after a series of increasingly urgent notices that tragically went unanswered, they found her remains described as mostly skeletal. The level of decomposition was extreme. It provided undeniable proof of just how long she had been there, completely unnoticed.
That alone is shocking enough, but the specific details about the apartment itself, what was found around her, they make the story even more chilling and deeply sad. It's those small domestic details that really hit home.
Precisely. The environment in which she was found speaks volumes about a life that was simply paused. frozen in time. She was discovered lying on her back next to a shopping bag, almost as if she had just returned home and collapsed right there. And most strikingly, she was surrounded by unopened Christmas presents. This particular detail is incredibly powerful, isn't it? It suggests a life interrupted, maybe with expectations for connection, for sharing, or for celebration that tragically never happened. Her television was still on, humming silently for years, an almost surreal detail implying this continuous, unnoticed background presence in a forgotten life. There were also dishes stacked in the sink, further reinforcing the idea that life had simply ceased, mid-routine, mid-action, suspended in this unbearable stillness. These are like the threads of her last moments, just left hanging for years.
That detail about the TV still being on for years is just chilling, like you said. It really makes you wonder, how did the smell of decomposition not alert anyone? Especially in an apartment building in a busy, densely populated city like London. That's what so many people, myself included, immediately ask.
That's an excellent and very common question. And the sources give us a few explanations for this remarkable and tragic oversight. Firstly, the smell of decomposition was reportedly masked, at least partially, by a nearby open window in her flat. This would have allowed a lot of the scent to dissipate outside, rather than concentrating inside the building's common areas or leaking into adjacent apartments. Additionally, and this seems really crucial, there were ongoing renovations happening in the building itself during that period. So you had this constant background of unusual noises, drilling, hammering, general construction sounds, and a mix of smells like paint, dust, building materials. This provided a perfect tragic camouflage, really, making it easy for neighbors to maybe dismiss any unusual sounds or smells as just part of the construction work. It created an environment where an anomaly could just be overlooked. And here's another critical detail that really explains the prolonged delay in discovery. Her bills were being auto-paid to direct debit from her bank account. This automated financial existence meant that no immediate red flags were raised through conventional channels, like missed rent payments, bounced checks, or calls from utility companies or the housing trust. The system was just functioning perfectly, silently processing payments, effectively masking her absence for years. Plus, as we discussed, she had deliberately cut ties. She had no close contacts listed who might check in on her regularly, so her withdrawal from her social network, combined with this automated financial setup, created this echo chamber of silence. It allowed her to vanish completely without any alarms being triggered by human contact or financial problems. It was a perfect, albeit tragic, storm of modern anonymity.
And how was she actually identified, given the advanced state of her remains after such a long time? That must have been incredibly difficult for the investigators trying to bring some closure to her story.
Yeah, given the advanced decomposition, traditional identification methods like visual recognition or fingerprints were just impossible. Joyce was ultimately identified through a really painstaking process by comparing her dental records with an old holiday photograph they found. Dental records are uniquely resilient forensic identifiers because teeth, and fillings especially, can withstand significant decomposition and environmental exposure. They become invaluable in cases like this where other evidence has deteriorated. This forensic detail really underscores the tragic duration of her disappearance and the immense challenge investigators faced in just giving her back her name, restoring her identity.
So once she was identified and the investigation concluded, what was the official outcome regarding her death? What did the authorities finally say?
Well, the official inquest recorded an open verdict, which essentially means the cause of death was officially unascertained. While her pre-existing conditions, like the asthma and the peptic ulcer, were noted as potential contributing factors, a definitive medical cause couldn't be established conclusively. Crucially, though, the police ruled out foul play. So officially, this wasn't investigated as a crime in the traditional sense. It was recorded as a death due to unknown natural causes, albeit one shrouded in this overwhelming and profound mystery regarding the circumstances of her isolation and the delay in her discovery.
But the story certainly captured national attention, didn't it? It became much more than just a police report or a coroner's inquest. It clearly resonated with the public in a really powerful way.
Absolutely. The sheer tragedy and the profound nature of her story, a young woman being forgotten for so long in the very heart of a major bustling global city, it quickly became a national news story. It resonated deeply with the public, sparking this significant and often uncomfortable debate about social isolation, urban anonymity, and the perceived failure of society to care for its most vulnerable members. It really forced a conversation about the hidden lives among us, lives that many found deeply unsettling and confronting to even think about. And her story gained even wider attention and a new, deeply emotional layer of depth through Carol Morley's powerful 2011 docudrama, Dreams of a Life. This film wasn't just a rehash of the stark facts, it went much further. Morley used extensive interviews with Joyce's friends, family, former colleagues, people who knew her, to try and piece together her life. It offered a human face, a personality, a voice to a woman who had been so tragically forgotten. It brought her story to a much wider audience, moving it beyond just a news headline into a profound cultural touchstone. It really prompted introspection about our own connections and communities.
Yeah, you can see why Dreams of a Life was so impactful. And with cases like Joyce's, where the concrete facts about the why are so scarce and the mystery is so profound, the internet often becomes a space for intense speculation, right? Alternative theories, cultural interpretations. What kinds of conversations and theories emerged online once her story became more widely known? Beyond the official narrative, I mean.
You're absolutely right. The vacuum of detailed information about her final years, combined with the compelling and deeply unsettling nature of the case, it's just invited a lot of online theorizing and public discussion. One of the most common lines of speculation revolved around whether her death was truly natural. Despite the official findings, some online theorists and commentators questioned if maybe she might have been poisoned or even smothered, suggesting that asthma, while plausible, could have had a convenient explanation given the severe lack of physical evidence due to the decomposition. The argument was basically that without clear, definitive forensic proof ruling out foul play beyond any shadow of a doubt, some observers felt other possibilities couldn't be definitively dismissed. It reflects, I think, a deep human need to find a more dramatic or external cause for such profound tragedy, rather than just a silence.
And tying into her known history, what about theories surrounding domestic violence or abuse? That was a significant, albeit private, detail in her life before her isolation. It seems like that would naturally lead to certain speculations online.
Yes, that personal detail, the fact that Joyce was known to have left an abusive relationship, definitely fueled a whole other set of theories and resonated very strongly with many online commentators. It led to suggestions that maybe she was hiding or living in profound fear for her life, even if her death itself was ultimately natural. This potential motive for her extreme social withdrawal, this desperate need for anonymity and safety from a past abuser, it resonates deeply with many observers who understand the pervasive and long-lasting impact of domestic abuse. It transforms her isolation from just a personal choice into a potentially tragic necessity, doesn't it? A protective measure that ironically led to her being overlooked. This narrative provided a powerful empathetic lens through which many people viewed her disappearance. And this specific aspect, the context of her personal life and the broader societal factors that might have contributed to her vulnerability, leads directly to a broader, more critical discussion that her story prompted, especially online and in social justice circles. The concept of race and class blindness within societal structures. Her case highlighted how women of color and working class people more generally can tragically, disproportionately fall through the cracks of institutions and social networks. The argument here is that systemic biases, or maybe just a lack of robust and empathetic societal safety nets, can affect certain demographics more profoundly. It raises questions about whether the initial search for her was as persistent as it might have been for someone of a different background, perhaps, or whether the automated systems and neighborly assumptions were less scrutinized because of underlying, maybe unconscious societal patterns. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about who becomes invisible in our societies.
So, beyond the immediate cause of death or even the mechanics of her disappearance, her story became symbolic of something much larger, didn't it? It seemed to tap into a collective anxiety about modern life itself.
Yes, absolutely. Many online theorists and cultural commentators interpreted Joyce's death as this powerful, somber symbol of urban isolation in the 21st century. Despite living in a crowded city of millions, surrounded by people, buildings, constant activity, she effectively vanished in plain sight. Her story became a stark, almost terrifying representation of modern isolation and profound disconnection. It resonated deeply with these pervasive fears about anonymity, about loneliness, and the potential for utter anonymity in vast urban landscapes. It really challenged the comforting assumption that just living in a city inherently means you're connected or supported or even safe from disappearing without a trace. It made people ask, if it could happen to Joyce, could it happen to anyone? Could it happen to me?
This case, then, is less about solving a crime in the traditional sense and much more about unraveling a societal mystery, as you've so powerfully put it. How does Joyce's story compel us to reflect on broader issues like urban loneliness and bureaucratic failure, especially in a world that seems to pride itself on connectivity?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, Joyce's case is just a stark, almost unbelievable illustration of how profound isolation can exist even in the most densely populated communities. Truly counterintuitive, isn't it? Here she was in London, a global hub pulsating with millions of lives, yet she became utterly alone. Her bills were quietly being paid through automated systems. Her neighbors, with their busy lives, simply assumed she'd moved out. And her family's earnest attempts to find her, tragically, were unsuccessful. They hit dead ends. This raises an incredibly important and unsettling question about how a person could become so incredibly invisible, so profoundly forgotten, in a world that is supposedly so interconnected, so saturated with information. It points to a systemic failure, I think, not necessarily of malice, but of oversight, and maybe a collective lack of vigilance within society and the very institutions that were, in some abstract sense, supposed to be looking out for her, even if just through routine checks or basic human contact. The automated world in this instance paradoxically facilitated her disappearance. It created this silent shroud around her.
And the media and internet responses to her story clearly show how deeply it resonated with people's anxieties. It seemed to tap into something really universal.
What's truly fascinating here is precisely that resonance. When her story finally broke and gained national attention, it wasn't just another news item. It exploded into this national discussion, sparking a wide debate about the prevalence of social isolation and the perceived failure of society to truly care for its most vulnerable members. The documentary Dreams of a Life further amplified this, giving a tangible human voice to a woman who had been so tragically forgotten. But beyond Joyce herself, the film and the subsequent public discussion highlighted that there are undoubtedly countless other people living in similar states of profound isolation and anonymity, just waiting for their own silent stories to be discovered, or tragically, never to be. It put an uncomfortable spotlight on the hidden lives that exist among us in every city, in every neighborhood.
It makes you truly wonder, doesn't it? Could something like this still happen today? In our hyper-connected world, with social media, constant updates, everyone seemingly documenting their lives, everyone just a text message away.
This raises an important and frankly deeply uncomfortable question for all of us, for you, our listener, and for society at large. Despite all our digital connections, our vast social media feeds, our ability to be seemingly always on and reachable through countless platforms, are we truly more connected on a human level? Or are these digital ties often superficial, creating an illusion of connection that can actually mask profound loneliness? Joyce's case highlights the immense and profound cost of being forgotten, and the potential for people to vanish socially long before they vanish physically. Digital connections can often be a poor substitute for genuine reciprocal in-person relationships, and the core human need for real connection might still be unfulfilled for many. Her story remains a powerful, timeless warning, I think, that even in an era of unprecedented connectivity, real, profound isolation is still a very real danger lurking just beneath the surface of our busy lives.
Let's maybe unpack the why behind Joyce's choices a bit more, because it's clear the sources present these conflicting threads of truth about her life and her eventual withdrawal. It's perhaps the biggest lingering question of all.
Exactly. The biggest mystery in this case isn't strictly how she died officially, an unascertained natural cause, but profoundly, hauntingly, why she chose to disappear so completely from her friends and family. This is the very heart of the enigma that continues to captivate and disturb people. We can explore the possible reasons. Her history of domestic abuse is a very strong contender, suggesting an overwhelming need to hide, to establish a new, safe life where she couldn't be found. It could also have involved her mental health, perhaps, which may have deteriorated, or maybe just a deep-seated desire to simply start over, to shed her past identity entirely, or maybe a combination of these complex factors. The self-imposed isolation theory is highly plausible, given her deliberate cutting off of contact with her entire social network and family. She actively chose to sever those ties, which is a powerful, difficult, and ultimately tragic act in itself. Now, the accidental death theory remains the official and most likely medical explanation based on the police and coroner findings of natural causes. It's the most straightforward medical conclusion given the limited physical evidence available. However, it's crucial to understand that while this might explain the ultimate physical cause of death, it absolutely does not explain the preceding years of profound isolation. That's the part of the mystery that medical findings alone cannot touch. And it's what makes her story so much more than just a case file, isn't it? The official cause of death might be simple, but the life that led to it and the years it took to discover it are anything but. Which brings us back, full circle really, to the overarching societal failure theory. This kind of underpins the entire case and is perhaps the most profound takeaway for all of us. It argues that Joyce's death was a profound failure not just of individual connections, but of society and the institutions designed, theoretically, to support people. Her automated bills silently ticking away, her neighbors' quick assumptions that she had simply moved, her family's desperate but unsuccessful attempts to find her, all these threads weave into a narrative of systemic oversight, of a society that inadvertently allows its most vulnerable members to slip away unnoticed. The conflicting threads, the vibrant social woman versus the isolated, forgotten person, the official narrative of an accidental death versus the larger societal mystery of a human being's disappearance, and that haunting reality of a television left on for years, burning silently in the background of a forgotten life, all form this complex tapestry that forces us to examine our own communities. It makes us ask, in quiet moments of reflection, who else is out there, quietly disappearing in plain sight?
Joyce Carol Vincent's story leaves us with a quiet, profound sadness and a haunting silence that really lingers. It's a tragic beauty in a way, and it's a stark reminder of human vulnerability and the invisible threads that hold our society together, or sometimes tragically fail to. Our life and death, so profoundly alone. It's a story that truly stays with you.
Her life and death serve as a potent meditation on how easily a person can become utterly alone, even in the midst of millions, and how easily that isolation can be masked by the noise and the systems of modern life. It encourages us, perhaps, to look closer at the world around us, to maybe reach out, or simply to acknowledge the presence of others in our communities, lest another thread quietly unravel.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration. Next time on Threads of Truth, we travel to rural Ohio and follow the anonymous, threatening messages of the Circleville letters, a mystery that tormented an entire town.